So basically RACI matrix again is very powerful tool to identify where the stakeholders come in the larger context of your power interest, right? So you can again plot this in terms of their of the role that they're playing with respect to your project. So if it is here, this one is basically about your project or your activity or the requirement. It's nothing to do with their role or thing. So your power interest rate is one thing, and then here this is with respect to your project, that this CRM product development installation project, for instance, if you're talking about it, within that, what is each stakeholder or each manager or each person, what is the kind of RACI that they would play. So RACI stands for responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. So that means that
What
again,
is S doing there?
SC is also there. SC is what I have added. SC is this one, supportive. Okay, we'll come to that. I've added that coming from a different thing. That's also another flavor of this RACI, but that's not used much. But I have added that to. This is something again that I created about a good 8 years ago. So RACI is responsible, accountable, consulted, informed, and if you want to add S there, you can add that as supportive. So so essentially, you're trying to identify which stakeholder needs to be informed, which stakeholder has to be consulted, and who has to be held accountable, and who is responsible for a particular feature, for a particular functionality, a task, whatever it is, right? So that means that if you're working on, for example, a task could be create requirements. Yesterday we were talking about the responsibility of business analysts to own the requirements, right? So here, if you're a BA, for example, a business analyst would have the create requirements and own requirements, manage requirements, all of that. Who is responsible and accountable for that? It's the BA. Whereas if it's a solution, for example, we were discussing the solution deployment, technology stack identification, it's the architect. So the architect is accountable. But then who can be consulted in that? An SME can be consulted, a developer can be consulted in that solution identification, right? So that's why when you try and create this RACI matrix, it's important that you clearly identify who are responsible for that particular task, feature, whatever it is that you identify, and then who is accountable, who can be just consulted. Just they don't have any say. If anything goes wrong, you don't have to. Again, this is the traditional approach, to be honest. Again, in Agile, end of the day, the team is responsible, right? There's no finger pointing on fault finding within Agile. It's a collective effort of the team. If the particular deliverable goes wrong, if it's a failure, then you're not pointing fingers to anybody. It's actually collectively the team says that, okay, we messed it up. Let's see why we went wrong, and then try and rectify. So again, just keep these two things separate. These things are all old school, traditional ways of doing things. But I wanted you to know, because it's important. You can use this as a tool. It's a powerful tool, but then not much of use in the Agile context. So responsible means they do the work. Basically, they're the people who are responsible for your BA. You would create the requirements, and then accountability is basically the decision makers. Who is held accountable for doing something if something goes wrong, right? So the decision makers have got that. So if it is to do with a technology decision that has gone wrong, selecting a specific tool that has gone wrong, then it's the architect and the developer, the application architect, the solution architect, the developer that would be held accountable. Even the developer is actually kind of responsible for implementing it. So in that case, it's the accountability lies with the architect, whereas the responsibility is the developer. And consultant is people who can possess the required inputs for a task. So either, for example, SME, a subject matter expert, a domain SME, a banking retail expert. So basically, they're the people who are consulted for seeking advice, for seeking a direction, whether this is right or wrong. So, and then informed is basically just need to inform them. They just need to be informed about the outcome or the result or the output. So you don't have to. You're not holding them responsible. They're not accountable. They're not even consulted. They're just updated. You just send a mail, or you just let them know, send a report saying that, yeah, this is what has been done. So they're informed. And then S is basically supportive. So you actually use these people like IT, the HR, training, infrastructure support, DevOps. They're the people who are typically in the S side of things. They're the supportive network, they're the supporting personnel. So again, responsible roles, persons working on the task, who is responsible for completing the task, owner of the initiative, a person assigned to the task. That's the person that you would say they are responsible. And accountable is the people who are taking decision. They're approving the completed task. So people who review and approve. So those are the accountable. And then they're answerable for all key decisions, as I said, good or bad. Yeah, typically those will be bad. That's when people will get pulled up. And then S is supportive. So the role is a person supporting the initiative and whose commitment is needed to succeed. So it's like they are not directly accountable for that particular task, feature, or whatever the document, but then their involvement is highly appreciated. That would really result in something. Typically experts, sponsors, initiative, head of department, those are people that are supporting the whole initiative, right? They're not accountable, they're not responsible, because they're not taking key decisions about the technology, about which tool, which product. They've got the budgets, but then they're not really taking the day-to-day decisions, right? So they're not held accountable to that extent, but then they're supporting this whole, how the team operates, how they're working on. You need to keep that into mind when you try and identify the stakeholders. Consultant is again people who have got who can provide ideas, insights, knowledge, who has got that, as I said, SME, the subject matter experts, the domain SMEs, people who have got a lot of experience on this kind of projects, who have done projects before, who don't have anything to do with our project, but perhaps because they are in a different team and they worked on a similar project, similar tool set about 2 years ago. You consult them, you just talk to them, hey, can you tell me how it is done? Perhaps they will come to your desk and they do the work, then on this they'll try and set up the whole thing, they configure the servers, but they don't have anything to do with the project that we have in hand. They are not taking decisions, they're not taking accountability, they're not doing the actual work, they're not even supporting us in that sense of supportive role. What they're doing is they're giving us a consultation in terms of their experience, their expertise, right? So that's why typically the architects, specialists, and these kind of people come under consultant. And the informed is basically these are the people who need to be updated, who are to be kept notified. Remember, we're talking about that, keep satisfied, keep them engaged. These are the people who would be receiving some kind of reports, updates on what's happening on the project or initiative. So perhaps a monthly status update or a report. So these are the people typically in the high level. So they're not really involved in the day-to-day operations of this project or things like that. So that's the informed. So if you just take this as a rule of thumb, that would, so R, responsible, A, accountable, then S is supportive. Some people don't use the supportive, they can just say consulted and then informed.